Hello, everyone. Welcome to Checking In with Changemakers with Be the Change Media Network. My name is Lily Mott, and this is the show where I get to catch up with past guests of Be the Change podcast. And I've been hosting this podcast for over 3.5 years now, and my guests have done some very exciting things since I got to talk with them. So this is an update of some of the work that they've been doing. My guest today is Lily Painter, and she is an Indigenous multidisciplinary creative, advocate, student, and organizer. And I'm really excited to learn what all of that means to Lily and explore all of the work that she's done since I talked with her, which was back in April of 2023. And she was featured on episode 146 of the podcast. So it's been a while, and I'm really looking forward to talking with her about all of the work she's done since then. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Lily, and we'll dive right in. Okay, perfect.
Do it.
I'm so sorry about
Yay!
that. I'm still trying to figure out. Instagram Live throws me for a loop every single time I do these. So
I love them, but I really hate them.
it's so funny because I just feel like I'm like, it can't be me at this point. I'm clicking on it. I'm doing everything I could do. I am so excited to talk with you. I think that your Instagram account has been one of the most fun to follow over the last year or so. I just love I love all the content that you post. I think it's so interesting, and there's just so much to unpack with all the work that you've been doing. So I really want to dive in and just talk about all of it.
Okay.
I also love the title multidisciplinary creative. And so I want to talk about that a little bit because I think it's really, really interesting. And I love when people have kind of very specific things to the work that they're doing. So I want to unpack that. But I would love to get started by having you give a quick intro just as to who you are, a little bit of a better intro than I just gave, who you are and the work that you're doing, and then we'll go deeper from there.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. My name is Lily Painter. I'm Kiowa and Winnebago from Anadarko, Oklahoma, on the Kiowa Comanche Apache land reservation here in Oklahoma. I am 22 recently. Last time I was with Lily, we were doing lots of talks about MMIW work, and so that's sort of what I'm mainly organized around is the community advocacy in policy advancement, awareness, artistic creation, finding ways to make advocacy holistic for the Native community. And it's not just MMIP, but that's mainly what I do. So that's why I say multidisciplinary creative, because I don't know what to call myself. But also I know that the way in which I work and the community I work in is sort of reflective of that too. So that's what I try to put word out about, and that's kind of what I do. I'm just a gal.
No, you're a lot more than that. We're gonna talk about all of this work that you've been doing. So tell me about some of the recent projects that you've been working on. I know I saw about the book club that you've been working on. Can we start with that? I think that's so cool. Tell me about the inspiration for that, what the work's been like. Give me the whole story.
So, Indian Girls Book Club. If you guys don't know, now you know. But a book club about promoting literary access to the Native community. Primarily, we work with lots of Native youth and also girls. So it was founded by my very, very good friend, Kinsale Drake, who we met actually sort of in those spaces where you don't really connect with other Native people. And it was really early on too. So we both started as like cosplayers online, and we're literally finning for, the meme where it's the two furry wolves that are back to back. It's we don't live in the same state as whatever that was. Weren't really aware that there was a wider community of people who loved consuming media and also didn't have that media readily or accessible to them. And so I think we're coming up on a year now. It'll be a year in April of the official launch of the book club. But yeah, it's basically just a virtual and in-person organization that promotes literary access through sending out books for free. We've definitely sent we're close to 2,000 books that we've sent out completely free to tribal libraries, kids, some universities, families, preschools, like anybody who needs a book. Essentially, we try to make the rounds. But we also do free literary programming for poetry and writing and all kinds of fun stuff. Zine making.
Wow. There's so many, yeah, there's so much going on with that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, so is there a certain selection process for the books? Is it kind of any and all books? Tell me a little bit about that.
It's books that we like.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
books like that we want amplified. But it's also what the community wants to. I mean, here's literally like some of
Oh
them.
my
Like they just live on
gosh,
a little
yeah.
shelf that I just have. But we really look to books by Indigenous authors that haven't been uplifted yet also. Because like we know, like in literary canon and sort of in the normal space of like who gets promoted in literacy, it's not often reflective of like what the community wants. And also it's like they've uplifted people in the past who aren't representative of our communities, whether that's their, writing is void because they're predatory or they're like pretending to be native or like crazy crap that happens. It's really just like what we would have wanted to see when we were younger and what we know will like propel this next generation of native readers and writers. And then the ones that just didn't have that. So it spans all ages. So it's preschool kids. We literally have like books teaching like kids to speak in their native language, and then all the way to like elders. Like it's just all encompassing. Picture books, chapter books, sovereignty books, law books, anything.
That's so exciting. I think that I might have caught you on the podcast right after, or maybe right before this all went into place. So this is so cool because when I was stalking you a little bit on Instagram, I was like, wow, okay, we have to chat about that because I think that's just such a cool idea. How are you managing to balance this work that you're doing and kind of continuing to educate people about these issues and continuing to serve as an advocate, as an organizer, doing all of these different roles while being a student? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's not been easy. I think the last 2 semesters have really like hit a wall on that end. I feel like this is like a problem a lot of people who came into college the same, like sort of like our generation too.
Mhm.
My freshman year of college was when COVID. So I spent the first 3 semesters of college. It was at 3 out of 8
Yeah.
semesters of college. And my classes weren't it's not really my university's fault, but like nobody was adapted to how you do online classes. So there was not that many classes like for me. So I think I took the minimum 12 hours for 3 semesters straight, and it like set me back
Mhm.
a lot, and I didn't
Mhm.
sort of how that works. So the last really like this semester I'm cracking down hard on it, but like trying to figure out like how do you like make up those credits, and like it's hard because I really want I want to graduate because I want to be doing like real work now, especially because like book club has sort of taken off, and also just my own type of projects and like wanting to see like where I'm most useful and like actual career path wise, but still like sort of wanting to like not be done with college because I didn't really get a college experience because of pandemic and everything. So it's been a lot of like giving and taking, like lots of compromise, making myself not go to conferences and stuff because I'm like, no, I should stay in school because it's hard, but it's definitely not easy. And I think that's something that needs to be brought to like the forefront of like not just Native advocacy, but like anybody who's out there, like the people you interview on Be the Change, where it's like schools aren't really accommodating to people who are doing social work outside of school. It's like, yeah, they have extracurriculars, but there's people out there trying to push systemic change, and it can happen when you're in an institution that's not for that. And I feel like that's just like a struggle it falls on deaf ears sometimes, but I know I'm definitely not the only person who's like yeah, like I can go do this insane like community love project, but I have to miss school, and y'all guys can't understand that it's like furthering the community, and which is something that you should build up your students to do, is like work outside of school, like being able to give back to like where you came from. So it's just it's a whole mess, but it's been hard, but I'm enjoying it and I'm figuring it out
Yeah.
as I go.
Yeah. Ugh, I feel like I have a couple thoughts on that with, I think it's so difficult, like you were saying, with colleges kind of understanding this work often because like you said, it doesn't really fit into that box of extracurricular. It's not like, oh, I'm going to play a tournament or something as easy as some more, I guess, more traditional college extracurriculars are. It's a little bit more difficult to explain, oh, I'm going to this conference or I'm going to speak to this, and it's really important. And I think it's a lot more difficult to translate that. So I really appreciate you talking about that. And I think it's interesting, like you were saying, with those of us who were in college and even those in high school during COVID, like you were saying, that weird balance between wanting to get into the future and start working and doing all that, but also feeling like maybe there was time lost or maybe some like growth lost that you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing a little bit. So I'm glad that I asked you that because I think a lot of people resonate with those exact thoughts. So I think that was great. Tell me if it's not too scary, because I know that this is a difficult, especially like this time of the year. I think there's a lot of decisions starting to swirl around. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking. But what are your thoughts for the future when it comes to book club, when it comes to the work that you're doing, when it comes to maybe careers and all that? What are your thoughts for the future?
I think book club is I think it's on a great path that like we've worked really hard for. And it's not that I don't have worries about that, but it's like I see a path where that's going. Like I see us, continuing to like put more work in, and it gets better and better the more people know about it, the more people are willing to invest, because it really is, like right now it's a 3-person team. It's myself, Pate, who is our youth workshop coordinator, and Kinsale, who's our executive director and our founder. And I hope we just acquired 501c3 profit or 501c3 status. Whoa. So yeah, I feel like that's the clearest part of my life is where that's gonna go. And probably college, because it's like I'm nearing the end, so I know what degrees I'm gonna get. I've continuously struggled with what I want to do and turning what I do into a career path, like for me. And I think I've also grown to understand that a lot of the stuff I like, especially when we talked last, like what was I saying? I was doing like, I had like new projects coming out, and I was doing like matriarch medicine, and I'm still doing that. But I think it's been a lot of shifting what I did as like a youth community organizer into like, how do you turn that into real work that's like more than just youth? Because youth work, bottom line, is good, and youth work, bottom line, is needed and essential in uplifting the problems of a community. But there's a certain point where that has to elevate as you grow older, and trying to find that middle ground has been the hardest part, because like in my community, and I think in like the broader Native community too, I'm still considered a youth. I'm 22, which the rest of the world doesn't feel like that's like youth, and I'm like, yeah, I feel that too. But as I approach like the sort of ages where I'm aging out of a lot of like the Native youth run programs, like just sort of trying to figure out like how does matriarch medicine turn into a thing where it's like, is that a nonprofit? So am I going to be a nonprofit administrator? Like, am I collaborating with other groups and, making that into like I don't know what that looks like. And it's definitely like, that's the most uncertain part, I think. The only thing that's like a constant is that I know that like I'm guided by the values that I'm currently living by, and I always have been. And I don't stress about ever like not knowing what to do. It's more just not knowing how and in what way to do that.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at right now, which I feel like I'm trying to convince myself it's more normal than I'm making it, because I think it is, where it's like everyone gets out of college, and unless you're like, I've always known I wanted to be a doctor, I've always known I wanted to be a lawyer, everyone's like, what do I do? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so true. And I also think I had a very similar conversation with Zion Vergy, if you are familiar with his work, because he was telling me when he graduated, he had the exact same thoughts about how for a lot of, especially activists and change makers, when you're no longer in college, it's not like a background thing, and you can either choose to make it more of a background thing than it already was, and like kind of not phase out of it, but you do have to put it on the back burner of a career often. Or you can choose to go kind of full speed ahead and make it your job and make it your lifestyle. And he was like, and as much as you might want to, do that thing that you're doing, you do have to start to prioritize things and make decisions, which is terrifying. So I totally get that, because I think it is just, it's all these decisions. And you're right. I do think a lot of people feel that when they're coming out of college, but I think with this work that you're doing, you're so right that your passion, it has not changed, and I can see that just talking with you. I'm like, you're gonna do amazing things. I'm not worried about that, but it's just what you do. So I think it's exciting just as much as it is lots of questions, but it's going to be really fun to follow along with whatever you choose to do. What are some of the projects or maybe events or things coming up for you that you're looking forward to? I'm sure a lot of it is school right now, just as you're coming to the end. But is there anything like that that you're really excited about coming in the near future?
So matriarch medicine, if nobody go check, but it, I don't know, a few months for sure. Because that's being completely revamped into a new, like, more collaborative, like, exploration of Indigenous advocacy. Like, it definitely, like, expanding from, because it emerged out of like a MMIP grant from the Center for Native American Youth. So it had to have that like pillar of MMIP, which it still will have. But I think, like I said, as I've grown, I see it sort of being more useful in terms of like promoting different aspects of what that means instead of just creative. So having like an opportunity for policy advancement about like missing and murdered Indigenous peoples issues, resources, just like more of a database, holistic type of MMIP stuff. Same name, but that's coming soon. Probably summer break, which I wish would come sooner. So we have that. I have a brand. It's not brand new. It started like right before COVID. You can still see it on my profile, but I was going to do a fan film, Marvel Indigenous Voices, completely voice acted by, and like it's like done. Like the animations are done. COVID hit the second we were ready to like fully cast and get started. And it was crazy, and it was going to be the first project underneath my new like collective, which is also TBH, like, or TBA, to be announced, whatever. But it, just to throw it out there, it's called Corner Worlds. So it's basically a like marginalized voices collective. So sort of like, I don't know what you'd compare it to, but it's just sort of like a place where you can house like art and amplify that art.
That's
Stuff
so
like
cool. Yeah.
so that's coming soon, because I mean, COVID completely put that like on the back burner. And again, not even nonprofits knew how to deal with what was going on in the pandemic. So like grant funding was crazy. Like the donations we had for that were like, wait, never mind, there's a crisis. Like we need to divert funds to this. I'm like, yeah, do that. It's been on the back years that I am so excited to finally pick back up. So those two things. And then of course, book club. We're doing our biggest project right now that we could use a lot of help with. It's the book drop for the Navajo Nation. So the Navajo Nation is, encompassing of 3 different states, I believe. And it's what we call a book desert. So, not having enough books, and, it's a result of all of these systemic factors of literacy deficiency, not of our own causing, but yeah, the goal is to bring 10,000 books completely free to the Navajo Nation. So we're having 4 different stops, and each of those stops are going to have free books, like resources for voting literacy, like youth programming, free shoes, like we're giving out free shoes, food, all the fun stuff. But sort of like to raise awareness about, what that reality is for Native people who live on reservations or secluded tribal lands, not having those books. Like, we believe you shouldn't have to drive 2 hours to the next library to get a book. So yeah, that's probably the 3 biggest things going on right now. And school. So yeah.
In school, of course. I think that's enough. I think
Yeah.
that's plenty of things. That's so exciting. And I'm gonna ask at the end just for ways that people can support you, how they can follow along. But I have one more question for you. I asked you this back when I interviewed you on the podcast, but lots of young people want to create change, but they may not know where to get started with that work. What advice do you have for those people who may be watching us, who may be listening back later on the podcast? Does anything like that come to mind for you?
Mm, I think it's I think it's still along the lines of what I said because it's the only way that I know how to do things. And I mean, like I said earlier, I would be nowhere if it weren't for the values that I was like raised with and instilled in me. And it's not just like the way I was parented. It's like an ancestral, like generational, like value system that you follow. And it's one that's rooted in like reciprocity and the idea that, you know, if you take care of your community, you know, it can only benefit the community. Like the community takes care of you. And I think with that in mind, it's about seeing where the true need lies and letting yourself be useful in the ways that you know that you're useful. Like I think a lot, like when I was younger especially, I struggled with wanting to help so badly with different like problems I saw going on, but not understanding, you know, what that meant. Like I knew nothing about like policy or like the big terms that are thrown around. You know, I didn't know what legislative meant when I was like, oh, I see this need in my community. But then I knew how to write though. Like I knew how to write. I knew how to take photos. I knew how to make art out of these things. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll start there. So I think it's like, you know, we as youth voices know the problems that we're in. And like the only thing you can do is to just like use what you have and, you know, go forward, always keeping your community in front of you. Like always in front, like, and that's the important thing too, is I see this so much, especially now and in the face of like what's happening in just the broader scheme of like social justice movement where, you know, you get pushed to the forefront of a movement and then, you know, I don't want to say you get corrupted, but like people forget what those values are. You forget that, you know, at the bottom line, you're there for the community. Like you're just a vessel for what needs to be done and what needs to happen. And you're only there as a matter of like, you just happen to be there. So it's your responsibility to like have that maturity and have that like that care for the community that you're being like pushed to the forefront to speak for. And yeah, I feel like that's just the bottom line, is like always having your community in front and then believing that because your community believes in you, like you already have whatever is within you to just go forward and do what it is you need to do, whether you're going to be a policymaker, whether that's a filmmaker, like whether you want to run a nonprofit or whether you know, want to make a t-shirt brand about activism, like whatever it is, it just, I feel like that's the most important part.
I love that. That aligns really well with my kind of guiding principle that if somebody asked me this question, which I have been asked, and I feel like I got flustered and didn't answer it the way that I would have liked, but the idea of like to whom much is given, much is expected, as far as kind of giving back to the people who have supported you and knowing that there's a reason that you got here and, you know, kind of using all of those resources and all of that support to do good. And so I love that. I think that's amazing advice. And I'll have to go back and listen to your episode and see if you said the same thing. I'm sure it was very, very similar. But thank you so much for coming on. What are the best ways for people to follow along with all of the work that you're doing and to support you?
You can follow my Instagram. It's Hercules, like Hercules. Oh,
it's so good.
Go the distance. That was my class president slogan, and I lost. But I like dedicatedly kept the Instagram, which is funny. Follow that because I am just notoriously really bad at posting when things are happening. But I'm here's commitment, post a week so people stay in the know about things. But yeah, probably there most likely.
Perfect. Yes, I definitely recommend that. Like I said, you post the coolest things, even just the story posts and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, Hercules.
But
It's awesome. So yeah, I'll definitely put that in the podcast episode description too. Everyone's got to go check out the Instagram. But thank you so much for coming on. This was so much fun, and I'm so glad that we got to catch up and I got to learn about all of this work. And thank you to everyone who watched or is listening to this episode on the podcast feed. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be the Change Media Network. And tune in to listen to this week's episode of Be the Change Podcast tomorrow. But until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys. And thank you so much, Lily. This was awesome. Bye.